We've been talking about the 8 consciousnesses, and we already have covered the 5 perceptive consciousnesses, the eyes, ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then we also have studied the cognitive, the 6th consciousness, which includes the various functions of the cognitive process, including recollection, interpretation, intellectualization of the perception. In the Sanskrit language, that cognition is samskara in the Sanskrit language. And then we have also gone through the ego attachment, which is the manas consciousness, which is the personalization of all dharmas. You personalize we all personalize our consciousnesses with a self, with an egoistic self. And now we have to start with the store consciousness, which is the final 8th consciousness, the alaya consciousness, which is a storage, a receptacle of all the present and past karmic energy, the karmic seeds. And if you are still in reincarnation in samsara, that's also a storage for your future karmic energy, your future bija. Bija means seeds. Bija is a Sanskrit word for seeds. And it says it comes first before birth and leaves last after death. When we reincarnate, when we get into the next cycle of life, this store consciousness enters first into the mom's body. It enters first. When a man and a woman makes relationship, it flickers the light, and then the bottle consciousness, which is the person who already have died, would shoot itself into the embryo. That it comes first. So it comes first. And then it leaves the last after death. Your eyesight's gone, your smelling gone, your ears are listening, and all these is gone. And the storage consciousness is the last that leaves the body. So it leaves last after a person dies. All right, let's get into, for the following maybe 5 or 6 sessions, we'll cover the store consciousness, and that's it for the 8 consciousness as a brief summary. So let's get into storage consciousness. Alaya is a Sanskrit word. It means storage, to store. It can store all kinds of energy. It's like an immeasurable, it can store an immeasurable quantity. So to speak, if we use the metaphor of a quantity, it stores all our present and past, I don't know how you name it, everything about us, all the impressions or experiences, everything about the individual is being stored in the individual alaya consciousness. And talking about store, which is the alaya, it has 3 characteristics just in that word, storage. The ability to store. It is the repository of all karmic seeds of all the other 7 consciousnesses, storing all the experiences and impressions and everything of the individual since timeless beginning, since eons of lives ago. When did it start? People say, when did my alaya consciousness start? What's the beginning? Well, we've been talking about this individual storage of all our energy, impressions since many, many lifetimes ago. When did it first start? Usually people ask that questions. And then we say, when we talk about starting, we have a time dimensions. A time dimension is based on the illusions of time. The space dimension is based on the illusions of space. And in becoming, sustaining, and in disintegration, and finally the vanishing, there's no such thing as time. Because when you trace time, yesterday has his yesterday, and his yesterday have another yesterday. Tracing time will be just like chicken egg and egg, which comes first? If we say chicken comes first, because chicken lays the egg, and then the egg hatched into another chicken. And then we say, if chicken is the beginning, where does that chicken comes from? Because we know logically that chicken comes from the egg. Where does it come from? You cannot delusively tie a beginning to all things. If you tie the beginning at a time dimensions to all existence, then you're not logical, just considering the logic. And of course, we say, then how does it all start? When we draw a circle, the first time when you draw it becomes the last time when you finished it. There's no beginning, no end. Talking about beginning and end, if we go beyond time and space, then we have the beginning and end. Why do we have to look at the first cause? The first cause that you're looking for, you'll never get a satisfactory answer. Because if there's a first cause, then you're contradicting yourself. If there's a first cause, that means that first cause comes out of no causality. It's just a break out, like a black hole. If there's a first cause, then all this universal truth about causality, cause and effect, doesn't stand. So don't look for a first cause as a timeless beginning. We habitually think about there must be a beginning, but there must be an end. But remember, we impose a time frame on everything. We impose a time frame on everything. And this time frame is just an illusion. This time frame is changeability. This time frame is not fixed. You're talking about today is the 13th. It's the 13th of January in Canada. And right now it's 10:45. But in China, it's not. It's the 14th. So you're talking about, and in Africa, it's not the same time. So if you delineate a time by fixing a dimension to it, then you're erroneously putting an illusion on time. And you argue that this is January 13, 4:45, and that's a universal truth. And then the guy from Africa calls up, no, this is not 13, this is 14th. And then if we can communicate with a higher level of existence in the Arupa Dhatu, they say, your time of 500 years is just equivalent to us 1 day and 1 night. So the changeability is the universal truth. Only if we can transcend the illusion of time can we be able to realize the truth, the universal truth. Only can we transcend life and death, can we realize nirvana. But who can transcend life and death? Only for those who are enlightened. Only for those who are out of life and death. If we are always imprisoned, we don't know what's the outside world. We have to get out first to see the outside world. And of course, if some people really want to say, I want to know, I won't believe in anything until I know what's the beginning, what's the first cause. Some people insist on knowing the first cause, and the simple answer would be God creates everything. Putting a very simple answer to a very complicated question. Don't worry about the first cause, you are created. It's an easy answer. You are created. Then who created you? Who created the Creator? It's unending. The same question was raised to Buddha at the time of the Buddha. And then Buddha used a parable or a metaphor to explain it. And he said, there was a man traveling on a road. He came to a crossroad. A crossroad, that road had a road leading to the south, the north, the east, the west. He come up to the center of it. And then suddenly he got shot by an arrow right in the chest, not in the heart, otherwise it would be immediate death. And he was seriously hurt, and he lay onto the road. He was wounded, seriously wounded by an arrow. He didn't know where the arrow comes from. It's just that we're wounded by life and death. We have sufferings of life and death. We get wounded, and then he lay on the road. And all these other passerby, all these other people passing, they all flock up to him and say, what happened to this man? And then they started to ask questions about what happened to this guy who was being shot at an arrow in the chest. Somebody say, where does this arrow comes from? From the north, from the south, from the east, and the west? And then another person said, who shot that arrow? And then another person said, what is this arrow made up of? Stone, metal, feather? What's the material that make up of the arrow? And then how did that man came to the intersection in the first place? They asked a lot of questions about time, about what happened to this man. The whys and whys and whys, which never get an answer. Because if they try to find the answer, yes, maybe they can find some part of the answers to it. But if they continue to struggle about questions of where does this come from, why, when, how, all these things, it would be too late. And then one intelligent guy said, hey, don't ask these questions right now. Rush him to the hospital. Rush him to the hospital and get him healed. That's the most immediate thing what we have to do. If you keep on asking questions, that man is going to die. So the intelligent question is, get healed. Get healed first. The intelligent question is, get out of life and death first. Get out of suffering first. Get out of mental afflictions first. Get out of all this samsara first. That's what the Buddha meant. Because our intelligence level is not up to a point that we can transcend time dimension. Get the man to the hospital and get him healed. Give him the medicine. Get out the poison. Don't worry about what kind of poison, what kind of arrow, where did the arrow come from, all these first causes, all these previous causes. The man is already dead. So the Buddha said, let's prescribe medicine to save. Let's rush him to a place where he can get rest. Let's pull out the arrow and not worry about where the arrow comes from. So, the ability to store through this alaya consciousness, which Jnana is the repository, the receptacle for all these existential seeds, all this energy that has stored in us individually for many, 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 many eons of lives ago. You, me, we all have this inside of us. We have this eighth consciousness, which is the storage consciousness, that store up all our karmic energy. That's if we can metaphorically use a computer, that's your chips, your memory. That's your memory that stored up all your actions, good and bad actions, all your speech, all your thoughts that happened to you, all get stored in there. And all this storage of existential energy has the power to make you suffer, to make you happy, to give you neutral feelings. All these things happen to us is because of this repository of energy that pushes us to where we are today. Some good energy, some bad energy. Some people have built up a lot of good energy. They're happier than people who build up a lot of bad energy. Our alaya consciousness has the ability to store all these things. Second, what is in store? What is in store? The Sanskrit language says this, bija. Bija means the seeds. That literally translates as seeds. Each seed in the eight alaya consciousness has the potential or the energy to produce the result when conditions ripen. It has infinite power to produce a manifestation. Manifestation in terms of action, speech, because you do things, you behave, your behavioral action. And these actions can be many, many actions. Some of them are wholesome actions, some are unwholesome actions. For example, killing, stealing, lying, all these unwholesome actions. And some of these actions in speech and thought are wholesome thoughts. Unwholesome action, unwholesome cause would result in unwholesome effects. That's the reason why some people are more healthier than the others, happier than the others. Some people are handsomer than the others, and some people are uglier than the others. All different because of your storage, your repository. You build it up yourself, not God. You build up what you're going to be. So you watch your thought. You watch what you're doing. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. You are the master of your own fate. You did it all yourself. Don't blame others. Don't blame your dad for not giving you this, your mom, your brothers and sisters, and all that. You, with your hands, with your thought, are responsible for what you are suffering, for what you're enjoying. So don't you have to watch your mindfulness? That's what we're doing in meditation. Increase your awareness of your own mindfulness. When you are addicted with gambling, you go to a casino, you're not being mindful of what is right and wrong. You will be addicted to gambling. Some people on the 28th of every month, just one night they gamble away all their paycheck. They're all gone. And then they keep on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Because what is installed in them is that greediness that has been cultivated in their alaya consciousness, and they get addicted to this greediness. They can never get rid of it. That's just one example. Some people are involved with relationships, men and women. Some are involved with many, many things. The list can never be exhausted. So, seeds like that in your alaya consciousness are basically divided into three kinds: wholesome, unwholesome, and indeterminate. Wholesome seeds are basically divided into three kinds. Wholesome, these are the unpolluted seeds, unpolluted, quote unquote. In other words, they are pure, away from killing, abstain from killing, stealing, lying, intoxications. All these, they are purer than the other seeds, which bring one closer to enlightenment. You have these wholesome seeds in you, bring you closer to the power of stay away from life and death. And there are also unwholesome seeds. These are the polluted ones, the tainted ones, which acquire the cognitive habits, preventing one from reaching enlightenment. All these are cognitive. Why do we say that this is cognitive? Because they related to a sixth consciousness. Remember all these eight consciousnesses? All these eight consciousnesses, our sixth consciousness, which is the mono consciousness, is the guy, is the one that who can actively change. The seven consciousness, which you already have studied, is just an ego. He just clings to that ego without changing. You may not realize you have an ego. Every time when you speak, you stick your view onto that ego. You may not know about it because it's habitually been that way. When someone attacks you with words you don't like, dominate you, that's a dominating ego. You don't like it. You repulsed it. That's a protective ego. You always think that this guy is talking to me like that. This guy is egoistic because how come he talk to me like that? But you don't know that in the process of defending yourself, you defend it with what? With a defensive ego. Ego against ego. You're not any better off. When you think that someone is violating your right, you think that you are struggling for justice and peace and fairness, but at the same time, you're defending it with another ego because you think that's what you deserve. So unwholesome, and also there is another classification of the seeds of the energy that's stored in us, indeterminate. That's a neutral feeling. Neither wholesome nor unwholesome. Indeterminate. Some people say, oh, indeterminate would be good. Indeterminate is better than unwholesome, but it's not pure too. I'm not thinking of anything bad. I'm not thinking of anything good. I'm just being drowsy. I'm just being daydreaming. You fall into the trap of wasting your time. I'm meditating in here. I'm indeterminate. I'm neutral. I'm not doing bad. I'm not doing good. But I'm daydreaming. I'm not thinking of wholesome thought. I'm not thinking of unwholesome thought. But I'm wasting my time. And that is not, at the same time, a polluted. But this pollution is not as bad as the unwholesome pollution. I'm only right now explaining the word a liar. It contains a lot of meaning in it. The ability to store, 能藏. What is in store? 所藏. The third, 执藏. The individual self attaches to the whole storage of seeds. From this repository arise all of our impressions and experiences of self, of ego, and their respective functions in the external world. That means this receptacle or repository of energy is not just there for nothing. It's being bound by your egoistic self. Who bind all these things together? Who is the in charge for binding all these feelings, all these seeds together? Is your ego, yourself. Each individual has his or her own storehouse storing and deploying karmic seeds. You store it, sometimes you use it, you deploy it, you employ it, you deploy it, of which he or she remains largely unaware. You may not be aware that you have an ego. You're not aware. When the time you are aware that you have an ego and you should watch out, you are one step closer to the path of enlightenment. If every time you become very angry or very greedy, you say, oh, I shouldn't. It's my ego that drives me to be angry. It's my ego, habitual ego, that drives me to take intoxication. It's my ego that drives me to go to gambling in the casino. It's my ego that drives me to strike up one-night stands with many other people. I don't know. Many possibilities. When you know that, you should take one step back and look at yourself. That's already called an initial contemplation. You are one step closer to the path of enlightenment because you watch your own ego. We're not aware that we have an ego. If the liar is imagined, if we can imagine the liar as a vast ocean, then the seven other consciousnesses are waves on its surface. All the 7 consciousnesses are not separate from the 8, nor do they disturb the stillness of its death, as all 8 are essentially one. Imagine an ocean. That ocean is like a repository of your alaya consciousness. The ocean is still, for example. And then the waves of greediness, the waves of anger, the waves of jealousy, the waves of anxiety, the wave of depression blows the ocean. And then the waves come up. What are these waves? These waves are the 7 consciousnesses. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the ego consciousness, all these waves come up. We suffer because of these waves coming up in us. All these waves, things that, each one of them thinks that they have an individuality. I'm a wave. I'm the wave of anger. I'm a wave. I'm a wave of greediness. I'm a wave. I'm a wave of authority and power and reputation and money. All these waves come up with an egoistic feeling. But the Buddha said, you are not a wave. You are just water. Go back to the water. All the waves are just water. You don't recognize your water. You don't recognize your stillness. Goes back to the wave. All these waves, variety of waves, are nothing but water. You are water. You don't recognize it. You are that nirvana. You are that enlightenment. But you don't recognize your nature of water. You just recognize your nature of waves. So waves is not wave. Wave is water. It's just being blown by the winds of emotions. They're essentially one. All 8 are essentially one. 1 is 8, and 8 is 1. But you don't recognize it. You think they're all different. And maybe I should point out to you one very important saying that the Buddha said. Watch this. Look at the lower half of this. When I finish this, we're going for lunch. Sakyamuni Buddha said, 佛说, the storehouse consciousness is very deep and subtle. All its seeds are like a torrential flow, like a waterfall. I do not explain it to the ignorant, for fear they would cling to it and consider it as a self. 阿陀罗是甚深细，一切种子如暴流。我欲凡愚不开眼，恐彼分别执为我。The alaya consciousness is so subtle, so deep, so difficult to understand. It's like a waterfall going deep and deep and incessantly going like a waterfall. That if you start to analyze, each drop of water is almost like close to impossible. So that's the reason why the Buddha said, I don't always talk about it. I don't always talk about this 8 alaya consciousness. Because if I talk about it, then all those who listen to it, if they're not intelligent enough, they will think that this is self. This is me. This is my identity. So the Buddha didn't talk about the 8th and the 7th consciousness in a lot of Theravada school in the beginning. He only talked about it in the Mahayana school. But it does not mean the Theravada school is inferior, no. Because at that time, it's easier to talk about just up to the 6th consciousness, not talking about the 7th and the 8th. It's easier for people to understand, to the mass population to understand. And it's sufficient to understand it, leading to enlightenment, doing, for example, the fourth contemplations, already good enough for going to enlightenment. So now I already have exceeded my time limit by 10 minutes. So from now on, we closely examine the alaya consciousness and see how it fits into your thinking, how it fits into the collective thinking of the world. How is the world produced? How come all this exists? Things from perspective of the alaya consciousness. There will be a lot of revelations of the mysteries of the world by studying alaya consciousness.